Welcome to the Iferia TechCast. Here we bring you all things science, engineering, technology, and innovation. I'm your host, Ezekiel Iferia, and today we are joined by Dr. Bilal Ahmed, uh, an interventional cardiologist who sticks catheters into people's hearts for a living, and also happens to be the co-founder of Lila Health, a gut microbiome company targeting heart disease. He's bringing real data, real science, and the doctor's integrity to the supplement space. So, Dr. Ahmed, I am truly excited to welcome you to the show. Thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me, Ezekiel. It was a great conversation last time, and I'm sure it'll be a great one today as well.
Indeed, it's a pleasure to welcome you. So let's get things started, Dr. Ahmed. Let's start with the high school story. You got suspended for a slogan, but still won class president through a popular revolt. So, no, take us back to those moments. Tell us about it. What does that moment tell us about who you are as a doctor and a founder today?
I think I'm a human, like the rest of us. I have a sense of humor and a slight, mild rebellious streak, I'd say. So for the audience, the quick story is that in senior year of high school, I wanted to become class president. At that time, UPS, the delivery service, had a logo, "What can brown do for you?" If you look at my skin color, I'm brown, or would be categorized as such, and call myself that as a South Asian or of South Asian descent. And so I put up these posters that were little pixels of my face, making a larger picture of my face with the slogan, "What can brown do for you?" And it was a play on words. It was the UPS slogan. And then also, "What can I, as a brown person, do for you as class president?" I was told to take the slogans down, and I didn't. I continued to put them up and was called to the principal's office, and subsequently was suspended for disobeying direct orders, and also, de facto disqualified from the race. However, when the time came for the actual race, people were going on stage to give their speeches, and a lot of my colleagues made it known loudly and publicly that it was not fair, that I was not being considered. And so I got the opportunity to go up on stage and give a short impromptu speech with the instructions that no matter what you do, don't say, "What can Brown do for you?" So the first thing I did was say, "What can Brown do for you?" And I gave my little perfunctory speech, and thankfully was elected class president. So I think it's human nature to rebel against rules that don't make sense. You know,
Mhm.
having an issue with talking about skin color when it's a reality and it's you and it's not directed at someone in a malicious manner made no sense to me. And so I did not follow that rule.
All right. All right. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. So, Dr. Bilal, your mantra is no BS ever. So, in the supplement industry, that's practically a declaration of war. So, what's the most common piece of BS you see in the supplement aisle that makes you angry? And as a cardiologist.
Yeah, there are many. I'll try to keep it to one or two. The main ones that bother me or irk me are when there's a promise of take this supplement and everything will be better. So without naming names or companies, there are products out there that say, take this for, let's say, 14 days and it will reset everything, meaning that there's a silver bullet or there's an easy way to be healthy. And that is just false. In life, in finances, and health, there needs to be effort. There has to be effort for there to be results. And just taking a pill or some other form of a supplement is not going to fix you. So part of that from my end is to emphasize to consumers and the lay public when I'm educating that there is no silver bullet. There is no fast track to health. You have to incrementally improve your lifestyle as well. And this is truly a supplement to a healthy lifestyle. I think the second thing that really gets me, and I'll limit it to two, is when there are claims that the supplement is evidence-based or science-backed. But then when you go on their website or you Google or you go on PubMed, where all reputable medical articles are published and indexed, you find nothing but links to that company's PR. That tells me that there is no science that backs the supplement, and it makes me very skeptical, as it should for any consumer as well.
All right. All right. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. So, you are one interventional cardiologist. I'd like you to, just give us an overview of what you do professionally. Break what's the role of an interventional cardiologist do for us.
Absolutely. So I'm an interventional and structural cardiologist as well.
Okay.
Interventional may be familiar to some people, structural maybe less familiar, but interventional cardiologist is just a subspecialty of cardiology, or basically a heart doctor, where you are invasive, meaning that you do procedures to open up blockages in the arteries of the heart, such as in a heart attack. So that's the interventional component. A structural cardiologist is a further subspecialization. So after you do cardiology and after you do interventional cardiology, you do additional training in fixing the structure of the heart. And what that means is if there's a hole between two chambers of the heart, I can close that hole through a procedure. If there is a valve that is malfunctioning, I can replace the valve or repair it without having to cut open the chest like a cardiothoracic surgeon would have to. So that's in a nutshell what I do.
All right. And that indeed was an insightful response. So I like to know, how did a heart doctor end up obsessing over the gut microbiome?
Yeah, great question. So I did not expect things to unfold the way that they did, but this actually started back in 2017 with research that I started with a few colleagues. One of those colleagues is now a gastroenterologist, and the other is also a heart doctor, but a different type of specialty. Essentially, what we were trying to do was to show a link between alterations in the gut microbiome and disease in the cardiovascular system. And specifically, what led us to that hypothesis was that most chronic illnesses these days are driven by inflammation, meaning if you really zoom in, peel back the layers, the underlying mechanism is too much inflammation. That was borne out in a lot of cardiology studies that were coming out around that time or had come out around that time. And at the same time, the GI space or the gut space was being revolutionized in terms of what's called C. diff infection, an infection by a bacteria called Clostridium difficile, also called C. diff. It's a notoriously difficult to treat infection. It often comes after antibiotic use, where antibiotics are similar to chemotherapy in the sense that they kill the infectious bacteria that you want to kill, or they kill the bad thing, but they also kill bystanders, healthy bacteria that are in your gut that are not causing infection. And when those healthy bacteria are lower in abundance, there is now room for other types of bacteria to grow and to compete for the nutrients that you give them by eating what you eat and it going to the gut. And so that's how C. diff proliferates and causes infection. It's often antibiotic resistant, meaning people will take an antibiotic course and still have C. diff infection. They'll take a second course, they'll still have C. diff infection. In 2013, in the New England Journal of Medicine, one of the premier kind of leading medical journals and internationally, really, showed that taking a healthy person's stool, putting it in a capsule, and then giving it to someone with C. diff infection who had failed antibiotics completely cured them, 95+% cure rate. And so that's where those two kind of fields and ideas came together. And we started this study looking at people who were getting a heart catheterization or catheters to look at the arteries of the heart to diagnose blockages. And we were getting rectal swabs to do what's called 16S sequencing to see what kind of bacteria were growing in the gut and in what diversity, and metabolomics research, basically looking at what chemicals were those bacteria making and what impact could they potentially have on the cardiovascular system specifically. So we had planned for 50 patients in terms of enrollment. We were three shy, so 47 patients enrolled, and then COVID hit and funding went away because it got redirected to a once in a lifetime pandemic. But the idea stuck with me and turned into a supplement company.
All right. So you say supplements can be woo-woo science, but they can also be real solutions. So what's the difference between a supplement that's actually backed by evidence and one that's just dressed up marketing?
Yeah, great question. I think there are a few differentiating factors, some of which I've kind of already touched on. A supplement company that's worth its salt, meaning they're likely telling you the truth, will tell you that you need to do X, Y, and Z for this supplement to be of any benefit to you, meaning you need to exercise, you need to eat healthy. There are certain things that you need to do as well, and that the supplement is not your only solution. It's not the quick fix. So that's one differentiator between kind of woo-woo science and kind of more, uh, cutting edge real science supplements. Another is this idea of transparency. Basically, if there is a supplement that works, let's say you assume the role of someone who's making a supplement company. If you're telling people that your supplement is backed by hard science, it would be foolish, I would think, to not advertise that science and make it publicly known as proof that, hey, this does work. Just look at X, Y, and Z paper. When a company or companies make that claim, but then make it extremely difficult to find the science or make the science not a part of their website or their marketing whatsoever, that's a red flag to me that you're saying the right things that, hey, trust us, we're science backed, but you're gatekeeping the science, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So those are kind of the two big differentiators that I would think of. To name a company in a positive way, there's a company called Ritual that's in the supplement space and the gut microbiome space, and also other kind of micronutrients. Their CEO and founder actually lobbied in front of Congress to increase the bar or make the bar higher for supplement companies in terms of regulation by the FDA. That to me is very compelling that, they're fighting for stronger oversight, more strict rules similar to what dictates the pharmaceutical space. And I agree wholeheartedly. The bar should be much higher because right now the bar is basically don't make certain claims on your packaging, and the FDA has no other real role in kind of governing supplements.
All right, Dr. Bilal. So, your product, Lila Health, includes prebiotics, probiotics, and postbiotics. Most people have heard of the first two, but what's a postbiotic, and why does it matter for heart health?
Yeah, absolutely. Postbiotic, I would say, matters not only for heart health, but for anything that is targeting the gut microbiome. It's actually the most important part. So, a postbiotic is just the chemicals that the probiotics, the bacteria, make after they eat the prebiotic, which is usually a type of fiber. So, bacteria eat their nutrients and then through their metabolism, they make chemicals. And those chemicals are called postbiotics. And those postbiotics are what actually do the health action that you're looking for. It's not the bacteria or the probiotics. It's not the prebiotics. It's the postbiotics. And so it's kind of unfortunate that the space has gone in such a way that people don't recognize that term, and that term is not widely used because without postbiotics, you're really not doing anything. Even when companies give you a combination of prebiotics and probiotics, what they're relying on downstream that is perhaps unsaid is that those bacteria or those probiotics you're supplementing with will eat the prebiotics or digest them, and then they will slowly at their own rate make postbiotics in your body. And so our concept is not, we'll do that. That's great, but then we'll also supplement or give a bolus or large dose of the postbiotic up front to basically hold you over until the bacteria at a slower rate make the same postbiotic. And then the added benefit is the postbiotic that we use actually acts as a catalyst to speed up the process of the natural formation of postbiotics by the bacteria that we're supplementing you with.
Okay, all right. So for the listener, for a listener in our audience, who wants to improve their heart health starting tomorrow, what's one simple evidence-based thing they can actually do, that doesn't require buying, too many products?
Absolutely. So two things I'd say that don't require buying any products. One does require some financial input, but we all have to eat. So I'll start with that. Eating what's called a PESCO-Mediterranean diet. That's the most evidence-backed heart-healthy diet. PESCO just means fish. So when you eat meat, try to avoid red meat and try to eat fish, things like salmon, tilapia, basically healthy fats. And then the Mediterranean diet is basically leafy greens, extra virgin olive oil, healthy nuts, healthy beans or legumes, and that should be the primary diet. And then the second thing that you can do is there's this, unfortunately, this myth that you need to achieve 10,000 steps a day in order to be healthy. That's not quite true. Actually, within the last 2 years in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology, there was this great study proving that, or disproving that, rather, that it really depends on where you're starting. So let's say I average 100 steps a day. If I increase to 2,000 steps a day, which is an achievable goal, much more achievable than going to 10,000, your risk of heart disease related death goes down by 7%. And every 2,000 step a day increase decreases your risk of heart disease and heart disease related death by a similar amount. And so I would say basically set a goal of 2,000 steps more than what you're achieving now. And over the next 2 weeks, try to achieve that, then sustain it, then slowly increase, sustain, basically make those two changes, dietary and, activity level, in a way that you can continue lifelong and not just jump straight to running a marathon or a half marathon, which is not achievable for most people.
All right. You're a doctor first, an entrepreneur second. So how do you balance the pressure to grow business, with the responsibility to not sell people things they don't actually need?
I definitely chose the harder path because, as my marketing team has told me over and over and over again, there are associations between a healthy gut microbiome and clear skin, and there are associations with this and that, and claims basically that they would like me to make. My moral compass is my moral compass. I approach this the same way that I approach patient care. I took a Hippocratic oath. There's no analogous oath in business, but I like to apply that same principle, basically do no harm and then subsequently do good for the patient or the consumer in this situation. So my bar is I need studies that are inhuman and have a certain level of evidence, meaning they can't just be associations. They have to be a trial, basically, where you're looking forward and you are randomizing people so that there's no bias that has been introduced by you as the observer, and you're comparing two things with two identical populations and then seeing that X works better than Y. That's the kind of level of evidence that I need to be able to make a claim about the product. But you're absolutely right. The pressure is definitely intense from certain aspects of the team, and understandably so, because it's easier to make sales and you grow quicker if you can make more claims and say that this will give you beautiful, healthy skin, this will boost your immune system. But I like to stick to what I can prove. When someone asks me for the proof in the pudding and asks for the data, I can just give them the paper or the papers and say, here's the data. And if I can't do that, then I won't make a claim based on it.
All right. Your newsletter is called Prescriptions for the Heart. So tell us about this. For someone who isn't a medical professional, how do you teach them to read scientific studies and spot bad science themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So you've clearly done your homework. So I have, education's a passion of mine, has always been so. And I feel that, as my role as chief scientific officer and kind of co-founder of a type of supplement that most people aren't truly well versed on, like you said, most people haven't heard of postbiotics. It's part of my job then to also educate. And the whole goal is to provide something to people that will tackle risk factors for heart disease so that they don't end up on the cath lab table in front of me with a heart attack and need a procedure or need my skills. That's the ideal goal, and that's the vision that I started this out with. And so part and parcel of that is educating people, on the basics of heart health. I go through a number of things like salt consumption, how easy it is to overconsume sodium and how that's linked to blood pressure, high blood pressure specifically. When it comes to looking at papers, it seems like a different language to the layperson. But what I find missing from medical professionals who educate, like TikTok doctors and Instagram doctors and so on and so forth, is that often we don't give enough credit to the lay audience, and we assume that they are dumber than they are. I think if you know what to look for in a paper, you don't have to get down and dirty in the statistics and know the math and be able to, calculate what the p-value is yourself. You can look at certain metrics such as, was this something that was done in humans? That's a great place to start. If there's data supporting something, but that data only comes from mice or rats, then you cannot make the logical leap that this will necessarily work the same in humans because the physiology is different. Looking at the type of study. So, for example, if people are looking at a retrospective study, meaning looking at things that have already happened in patients, basically going through charts, that is not as robust as doing a prospective study where you are following people into the future so that there are no variables that are changing the outcome without you being aware of it, if that makes sense. If you are
Yes.
following them into the future, then you're eliminating some of the bias and some of the what we call confounders that come with looking backwards in time. So I think there are a few kind of easy to understand tips that the layperson can use to basically differentiate between what a worthwhile piece of evidence is and what a lower piece of evidence is when it comes to scientific literature.
Okay, Dr. Bilal, looking at the future, where do you think the next big breakthrough in heart disease prevention will come from? Is it a new drug, a new understanding of the gut, or something else? I mean, I'd like to hear your own thoughts on this.
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason that I'm targeting the gut microbiome is because that's where I think the future is. So there's this concept and has been a concept for over a decade in heart disease. We have multiple predictive tools. You use 8 to 10 variables and you get an estimate of what somebody's risk of having a heart disease related event in the next 10 years is. But there's always a gap between what we predict and what actually happens in real life. And that gap is called residual risk, basically risk that we cannot quantify using the variables that we have. And that residual risk, largely accepted in cardiology now, comes from inflammation of some sort, but we're still searching in terms of where is that inflammation coming from and how do we target it. The gut microbiome space is a fairly new one. So the National Institute of Health started a 10-year project called the Human Gut Microbiome Project that finished about 5-7 years ago, just characterizing what a healthy gut microbiome looks like. The field is still in its infancy, one could say, similar to where genetics research was in the 90s, where you could sequence someone's genome, but it would take tens of thousands of dollars and it would take weeks. You fast forward 2 decades, and then the company previously known as 23andMe, they're now out of business. They were sequencing hundreds of people's genome in a day for pennies on the dollar. And then a few years after that, a technology called CRISPR came out, where you can literally change one base in the DNA and cure someone of disease. So 2 years ago, someone was cured of sickle cell disease for the first time permanently at Vanderbilt University using CRISPR technology. So I think the gut microbiome space is where genomics was in the 90s. And in the next 1 to 2 decades, we will gain more insight into relationship with different diseases, including cardiovascular disease, and also have targets that we can then make drugs for in order to turn off that inflammation or basically tamp it down to decrease the risk of heart disease. And that's already ongoing. So pharmaceutical companies have already started investigations and phase 1 trials looking at essentially postbiotics or chemicals that bacteria make as potential drug therapies for people who have cardiovascular disease and also some other types of diseases. But that research and development cycle is usually 15, 20 years, which is why we don't see a drug on the market yet. but I think it's coming to the pharmaceutical space, and I think it's one step closer to personalized medicine.
Okay. What does innovation mean to you in healthcare?
I think innovation these days in healthcare really comes down to being able to dissect large amounts of data and make connections where we previously could not make connections, meaning connections between different alterations in different lab values and then subsequent disease. What I mean more specifically is I don't know if you may be familiar with AlphaFold 3. Is that something that you've heard of?
Not really.
So, a very, very short story. About 2 years ago, Dr. Baker out of the University of Washington and one other person shared the Nobel Prize in medicine for this AI tool called AlphaFold 3. So basically, the way that it works is you give it a sequence of amino acids, which make up proteins, without, just a string, basically the alphabet. This AI tool or this AI model, AlphaFold 3, will give you the 3D structure of the protein, which is important because it tells you exactly what the structure of something that binds to the protein to either turn it on or turn it off needs to be, even if it's never been created in a lab before. And that was revolutionary and was actually done through Google. So Google acquired this lab, DeepMind, that came out with AlphaFold 3. And again, 2 years ago, it resulted in a Nobel Prize because it was revolutionary. I think innovation, specifically with what I do, looks like that. We are more bacteria than we are human cells, meaning there are more bacterial cells in us than there are
Mm.
human cells. So there's so many different variables and so many different connections that no human or group of humans can make anything of that data. You really need AI to be able to cut through the noise and come to conclusions in a similar way. And so the way I foresee this happening is that as computing gets better and as data sets get better, an AI model may be able to be applied to the gut microbiome space and kind of organ specific look at relationships between heart disease and different heart related parameters and come to conclusions in terms of this is the chemical that will alleviate this concern or this pathology in a way that we can't do as humans because we just don't have the computing power up here. That's what innovation looks like to me in this day and age, is basically dealing with large amounts of data and being able to make a structured assessment using the tools that we have in terms of computing.
Okay. For listeners who actually want to learn more about the science behind gut health and heart health, where is the best place for them to go? Learn more about your work, what you do, your newsletter, or maybe even connect with you to have a conversation.
Absolutely. So I have a series of blog posts where I've written about heart health, and I have a little hyperlink to every claim that I make within the blog posts that takes you directly to the academic paper that I got that claim from. That's on lilahealth.com. So LYLAH health.com. There's a blog page, all written by me, no AI assistance, no ghostwriter. I have newsletter, Prescriptions for the Heart, as you said, where I follow a very similar model. That's available on my LinkedIn. You can email me directly at Bilal, Bilal at lilahealth.com with any and all questions, and I'll get back to you in 48 hours. And I'm also active on TikTok and Instagram and make some educational videos as well. So a bunch of different places to find me. Pick one, and I'll find a way to respond to you in usually 48.
All right, Dr. Bilal. It has been such an insightful conversation with you here today, and I thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me, Ezekiel, and thank you for giving me a platform to hopefully educate.
Pleasure is mine, Dr. Bilal.